I have very fond recollections of my first ever job, as I think a lot of people here would too. It was the first time I had my own little space in this world that I could call mine. It would be very dirty and unkempt on a Thursday. It would be very clean on the following Monday. It would have a lot of, leftover food, things like that. It had my name on a small piece of paper. My workplace also had a coffee machine. And again, it was probably the worst coffee in the world, but it was coffee in my workplace. It was free. I could, enjoy a cup whenever I wanted to. I can pretend that I was inventing the most bleeding edge technology just because there was a cup of coffee sitting on my table. The ID card. I used to hate wearing that when I went to college, like a lot of people here probably did. But, you know, I wore mine with pride. It had the name of my company and things. It would get me in and out of doors, things like that. Of course, I've swapped like an ID card for a conference pass in the past many years, but it's still something which is a matter of pride. And finally, the biggest thing or the thing that had the biggest impact in the workplace for me was an extended monitor. I had never seen one before, and ever since I've never been able to work without one before. And so I think the first role that people have really makes an extraordinary non-linear impact in their career. And for some, they want DevRel to be that. So in the next 20 minutes or until Aditya decides to kick me off stage, let's crush some dreams and put some points forth about why that might not really be the case. Welcome to my talk, everybody. This is about answering a somewhat controversial question. So designations apart, today I'm going to be Chief Controversy Officer for DevRelCon Bangalore. And we're going to try and answer this question about whether or not a fresher is an appropriate hire for a developer role. And for this, I'll be using a combination of things that people love. So let's start with a very memorable debut. It was not memorable at all. It was a very mediocre debut. As a fresher, this person was only somewhat okay. Now let's look at another fresher in a slightly different industry, again, one that we love. Nobody can forget this first role, right? There's some others as well, which were, somewhere here and there. Today, this picture is iconic, but back in the day, this was just, eh. And this is probably my favorite of all, a debut that I will never forget. In his first ever role, my man MSD, he did not, quite live up to people's expectations. And so, is it okay to fail as a DevRel, or what is it that can set you up for success as a DevRel, being your first ever role? Or is it even appropriate for you as a fresher watching this, from some corner of the internet tomorrow? I don't know. That's the answer. I mean, the favorite answer of the tech community is it depends. And it depends is such a multivariate answer in this case. And let's, take a deeper dive into some of the factors that influence this answer. And let's see if we can sort of shift the answer in favor of something more concrete. A DevRel role really depends on what the company wants you to accomplish. Also, that's a very odd statement to make because even that can change from time to time. There's really a spread when we talk about what your organization intends for you to accomplish as a DevRel. There's always forces that are much beyond your control as a DevRel professional who might be very experienced, who has a very little experience, who comes from different backgrounds. You will always feel the tug of something that the market wants, that your developers need, that your product team wants to prioritize, that you feel as an individual that nobody understands about your product, and you really need to write a blog, make a video, or do some Instagram. I don't get Instagram reels that much, but people do it, people love it. I'll leave it to them. So the biggest factor that will influence whether or not a fresher can or will be an appropriate hire is where the company is placed at in any particular point in time and what it is that they want to accomplish. Do they want to go from 0 to 1 users? Do they want to go from orders of magnitudes more to move from having 1,000, I don't know, active users every week to 100,000 or 1 million active users? So your whole notion of where you want to go differs. And at that point, they could either choose to promote from within, in which case they'll pick one of their senior engineers or somebody who already has a particular quantum of experience with the product and give them the opportunity to become more public facing and create those assets that are necessary, versus hiring someone from left field and hope they'll, be of help and be just as effective because they possess certain other skills. Now, there's ways in which you can map out what exactly a person brings to the table in terms of DevRel. There's ways in which you create axes like these and maturity levels on these axes. This is actually a pyramid, but we're looking at it from above. But let's not get into a geometry lesson when everybody is evidently very hungry. So you can then map the particular skill set that you desire with the particular skill set that individuals you're trying to hire possess. And based on that, you can make an objective decision of whether or not a person that you're hiring for this role makes sense to hire or not. Now, quick show of hands. How many people here value a college degree? Who think that, a degree is important for a person to perform this DevRel whatever job, right? Not a lot of people. Now let's change the paradigm a little and say you have a kid. Okay, some of you do, some of you don't. Say you have a niece or a nephew, somebody you care about. They're sick. You want to go to a doctor. And then you feel more comfortable if the doctor has a bunch of diplomas hanging behind the wall. Yes, no, maybe. Yeah. But the same doesn't apply when people have to write critical pieces of software or write documentation about how to use software. Now, suddenly you think that college degrees are very important when you're, when you want a doctor, but you don't value it as much when it comes to, people just have to write software, right? How hard can that be, right? Again, show of hands. Based on, the information that you just heard, do you want your doctors to be people who actually practice, or is this, I smell lunch, but also, do I smell a little bit of hypocrisy here? So we want a person who is, well versed in the craft of being a medical practitioner, but not somebody who's watched all seasons of the web series that everybody likes to watch. Right? This is not a case of hypocrisy, but it's more a question of diversity in thought. Some of us, value certain things, and a DevRel profession is not very different. Having a college degree might not make that much of an impact as you imagine it to be. So, based on that information, if you're a fresher just out of college, it does not imply that you have an inordinate advantage or you're at a disadvantage for having, just a degree but not enough. Now let's do another quick thought experiment around this term. If somebody has demonstrable experience of what it is that you want in them, do you think it makes a better chance for you to hire them? So as a quote-unquote fresher with limited amount of work experience or no formal work experience, if you're still, let's say, active within a community, let's say you organize meetups and things like that, let's say you won a hackathon and now you want to bring that joy to a lot of other people. So in that case, because you have demonstrated experience in an allied field or a closely related field or an adjacent field, depending on how you want to call it, is it a good idea to develop that kind of experience as a fresher before you want to get hired? Is that what a lot of companies might look for? That's another question. And so let's take another example. I'll keep falling back to cricket. As you can tell, it's going to be a theme. Let's say, you want somebody to coach your kids in cricket. Now, do you go out and find a person who has played the game well and so can demonstrate, a good amount of the ability to coach your kids, or do you just find somebody who's very passionate about the sport, and just because 5 of their 50 slides have cricketers on them, you allow them to coach your kids? Or God forbid, your dad can pull strings, and so you become cricket's biggest administrator. So I don't want this to become a political discussion because we are recording. Mind you, the biggest skill I've developed as a DevRel person is knowing what to say and what not to say when on a camera. But you can see numerous fields like this. Now, let's say Haimantika is on one of her very famous vacation trips, and then she gets on the plane, and then the pilot says, "Oh, I have no idea how to fly a plane. I saw a bunch of videos, and for 15 days I've been watching how to fly a plane, and so I'm confident that I'm going to fly this." Now, it doesn't feel the same way, right? But when it comes to hiring somebody for a technical job or for a DevRel job, we're happy to consider people in boot camps. We're happy to consider people who are somewhere in the middle of their degree. Another thing that a lot of people come to me and say, college dropout, and they mention that during a conversation, and they say, they say it imagining that it adds a lot of glamour. And the Google's founders were college dropouts, and Facebook founders were college dropouts. Mind you, Google's founders dropped out of college when they were doing an advanced PhD, not when they were doing BTech from MS Ramaya Institute or something. Okay, so let's be very clear about that. So when you say stuff, there's a lot of context and weightage that gets added. And anyhow, you know the story. So again, the answer continues to be, it depends. And let's see if we can change that. There's no clock, so I don't know how long I'm speaking for. But anyhow, what's a company actually looking for when they're trying to hire? Answer is very easy, but we'll get there in just a bit. A company might look for, as a fresher who's applying to tons and tons of these jobs, you might imagine that a company is looking for somebody who can broaden their experience. And they're following this model of whether you want people who have a breadth of experience or whether you want people with a lot of depth in their experience. There's other models that describe, this is how employee satisfaction is, and this is how you have to build an environment inside an organization for an employee. There's also hierarchies that have been built around this. Building models is very easy, okay? You create a shape, you repeat that shape a number of times in different shapes and in different sizes and colors. You add some words that make medium to low sense. You create some intersections and charts around these shapes, and then you use some very simple terms in the middle of all of this. And then finally, you translate it into Japanese, for example. And speaking of Japanese, Atsushi-san, thank you for your sponsorship dollars. It goes a long way in bringing events like that here. But the point is, making all of these models is a lot of fun. It's very easy. You can create something out of nothing and call it. But what is it that companies are really looking for? Companies are really looking for ways to save money as much as possible. Ask any founder who's starting off and they're looking to hire somebody. Ask anybody in a mid-size firm, the problems of creating a requirement. Ask anybody in any size firm, they'll use an extra fancy term, but it means they're trying to save money and, squeeze as much out of the rupee as possible in order to make that hire successful for their company. And so I don't blame them for this, because there's a lot of hidden costs that we don't even know when it comes to hiring. Anybody who's been involved in hiring a number of people and who've looked at a number of resumes and who've done a number of interviews as an interviewer will attest to the fact that it's excruciatingly hard at a lot of times, finding the right candidate. And nobody has any visibility into what that cost is. Nobody has any visibility into what it takes to train a person in particular domains and fields is like, as a person who's, just, I have a resume, let me upload it to as many sites as possible, right? So people who are trying to find these jobs, and as a fresher, please be mindful that there's an enormous quantum of cost, which is complete wastage, that goes into trying and creating a ship-shape DevRel professional, or any professional, yes, but today is about DevRel. And creating a DevRel professional out of somebody that's trying to graduate? Be mindful. The answer is still it depends. And I have about 8 minutes before all of those tables are ready with food. There are, however, certain indicators that can give you an edge. So if you're a fresher and you're trying to get hired into the DevRel space, there are certain things that can differentiate who you are and what you're capable of as compared to a lot of people who are vying for the same space. Now, you could be a person who does a lot of contributions to open source projects. You could be somebody who's very passionate about development. You could be somebody who likes to learn in public and write about it and get a lot of people to view your content, or get like 5 very faithful followers to view your content. You could be a travel blogger. I know somebody here is. And that is an indication of, here's a person who goes through certain life experiences and likes to write about and share about these life experiences. Oh, if only I could focus their attention on certain technical problems, maybe they would make a good DevRel hire. So if that is your passion, follow it, be competent at it, and maybe it will lead you to a DevRel career better than what a technical education can. Maybe you're good at writing things. Maybe you're good at reading a lot of stuff and finding out mistakes. Extremely valuable DevRel skill, because documentation, I can't stress that enough. Maybe you're good at creating conversations. You know nothing about certain subjects, but you know to ask the right questions. You know to find the right people to sit across from and ask these intelligent questions. And maybe that's your superpower that will lead you into DevRel. A lot of these things might be stuff that a company wants to do inwards within themselves, and a lot of times they might be looking for stuff to do outwards and be outwardly. And because DevRel is what it is, it is so many different fields and so many different dimensions in one single professions. And so the answer continues to remain, as a fresher, if you have these skills, are you ready to be hired? And we don't know yet. And like I was just alluding to, DevRel has a certain number of peculiarities, and the best way to understand and realize that is to take a look at some of the job descriptions that we as a community are putting out. No two are alike. One wants people who are engineers. One wants people who are storytellers. One wants people who are community people. One wants people who've demonstrated qualities of being, introverts and sit by themselves and will code and code even when they're in a conference. And some want people who are, just chatting away in the corner, paying no attention whatsoever to what people are saying on stage. It doesn't matter. Everything is right. You're completely at liberty to do what you want. But also remember that the biggest challenge in being a DevRel professional is that no 2 days are the same. You know what this is like? I don't know how many people here have been to Hyderabad, but there's a place in Hyderabad where hopefully DevRelCon will happen next year, right? And there's a Kingfisher aircraft that just sits in the open, okay? And whenever I see that, I grew up in Hyderabad, so I have fond memories of the place. And whenever I see that, it feels like it's a perfect description of what I go through as a developer. And, I was qualified as an engineer, like movie directors and cricketers and music artists. And I was once an engineer, right? I went to an engineering college. But now I find myself increasingly in a space occupied by sales and marketing conversations. But also you see all those scraps of paper lying there. That's documentation work that I have to do on Thursday. So DevRel is so many different things during the week. It can be something on Monday, something on Wednesday, something else on Thursday. And you have to really be prepared to, you can't say no. A lot of people come and give you the advice, learn to say no. Oh, it's the one big important skill that you have. No. Okay, I'm saying no. It's very difficult as a DevRel person to say objectively no to certain work, because we're not necessarily building something that is meant for machines to consume or humans to consume. It's the intersection of both. Humans and machines will feel the impact of the work that you do, and there's no way to really communicate what can and cannot be urgent. You have to really change color with whatever task you're sitting on. I think that's a nice analogy. And you can keep on and talking on and on about breadth and depth and things like that. It's not going to matter. You have to take up whatever it is that comes your way. There's going to be enormous skills gap. And what I mean by that is, last week I was tasked with buying a camera, buying a light, and figuring out what focus and key light are. It has nothing to do with cloud platforms that I'm paid to evangelize. But I spent 18 hours looking at videos, reading blogs, and going through Instagram feeds. And now my YouTube Shorts is full of these camera people's videos, which I don't know how to get rid of. And the thing was, I had to configure a video setup. And so that is something you might have to do as DevRel. I was few weeks ago, I was in Salt Lake City at an event, and I was carrying, anybody here know how to fold t-shirts? Number one skill that you need to have as a developer relations professional is knowing how to fold t-shirts and how to do it fast and how to do it neatly. It can't be like the cupboard in your house. The t-shirts are the representation of your product or your project to the world. It has to be good. So again, I cannot stress on how many different skills you need, and you need to learn all of this on the go. There's really not a lot you can do in terms of compromises. And the other thing I wanted to do is list out all of the different titles that I've seen developer relation professionals come. Don't try to read it, it's horrible. Don't try to take a picture of it, it's worse. Now, given that there's such a massive spread, it represents two things. A, there's definitely a space for you as somebody starting out in one of these titles. Mind you, I have not added junior, senior, principal, exactly, all-star, ninja. I'm not even going there. So there is probably some space for you. But there's one absolute non-negotiable that I believe you need skill to succeed in a DevRel role, and that's the ability to think of someone else. So in your mind, you need to be able to relate with another person, specifically a developer or somebody in the community, and you really need to be able to empathize and understand their problems. Whether you're a fresher, whether you're 14 years into DevRel, or you have 22 years of Kubernetes experience, I don't care. If you do not have this singular skill, in my opinion, you're not going to be able to succeed as a DevRel person. I read this fantastic line somewhere while looking for material up for this talk. I thought I should really share it with folks. And there's apparently a report and things like that. It's more than just like a big psychological concept that you try to explain to people. It's something way more tangible than that. And the answer to whether or not DevRel can be your first role is yes, if you possess the superpower of empathy, you have a chance. If you can, write a good resume and clear 14 rounds of interviews. But the point is, it's the foundation on which your entire skill set for this role is going to be based on. And I'll quickly demonstrate why that's important. Imagine a user in your community. There's a lot of things that go around a user in many different ways. But for you to succeed as a developer, if you're able to think in terms of, or if you're able to imagine what it is that your user is actually saying about problems they have or projects they want or things that they want to accomplish, what is it that they're doing as they're saying these things? It could be complaints, it could be they're writing code, they're using AI assistants, they're reading on Stack Overflow. All of it is valid. You should also be able to imagine far enough and understand they might say things, they might do things, but what it is that they're really thinking. I love your product, or that could go so many different ways. And finally, can you also accurately describe what a user actually undergoes as they go through your product or project? This is an exercise in empathy whiteboarding of sorts for users in your community, and I think this is something that happens to you as a DevRel, and it's something that you really need to be able to do, and that might not necessarily emerge unless you first put in the effort of being somebody who does something, right? You could be a videographer, for example. You could be somebody who's done a lot of programming. You could be somebody who's built communities. But I think some of that foundational experience is definitely necessary in either a formal or informal setting before you can lay claim to an actual job role. Papad is here, final slides. You're building a team of human beings as a DevRel, not building a technical product. So it really matters to have that kind of empathy. All the rules that you've heard and all the lessons that you've heard and all the books about Steve Jobs and Elon Musk that you've not read, but audio books or YouTube summaries or Gen AI summaries these days, all that you've read may or may not matter. But you as a DevRel, as a fresher, can apply for a DevRel job if you find the right kind of synergy between the company that's hiring and the kind of experience that you bring to the table or promise to bring to the table. Don't come to it because there's a lot of travel, you have a fancy lifestyle, lot of free stickers and t-shirts, you can attend a lot of events. You can still do that without having to go through the burden. And travel is on the top of the list, mind you. But yeah, that's my talk. Thank you for being a wonderful audience today. And thank you to the organizers for having me. And, I was just going to, I'm going to KubeCon after this, again, travel. And I was, all about, I was going tweeting, there's an international event that's making its way to India for the first time, things like that. What I overlooked was there's another international event that first came to India today. That's DevRel Con. So big thanks to the organizers for doing that. And yeah, if you have any opinions or hot takes on my somewhat controversial opinions, I'm very happy to chat with you. Thank you once again. Have a great conference.